Oh, hey guys! I was just playing some Beat Saber because I was inspired by Kevin, Parry, and Caleb, who made this awesome VFX commercial for the Quest 2. So that got me thinking, we should recreate that. However, it's something that we've never done before. So this week's CopyCat is going to be a true challenge.
As you guys know, research is really important for VFX artists. So since we're going to make this Beat Saber type of effect, it's really important to really know the game and how it works. So that's why we first are going to do research.
Thank you! Thank you! Lorenzo wanted to do Expert Plus, the first block, and he failed.
Enough playing around, guys. It's time to start our test phase. And we had this idea to make Lorenzo float in the air with some wires. But at the same time we want to walk around him with a camera and collapse the walls beside him in 3D. But this means we need to recreate our studio in Cinema 4D, which means our walls also need to have textures. And we can do this with projection mapping, which we need to test right now. With projection mapping, you can add an image to a simple object like a cube. Now, besides projection mapping, we also want to see if we can add our camera movement in our 3D scene, which we can do with some 3D camera tracking. And on top of that, we also need to see if we can make Lorenzo float with wires from the ceiling. So, let's do this. We're trying to hang Lorenzo from the We're trying to hang Lorenzo from the ceiling, but apparently I'm choking him. The first thing we want to do for our project mapping is create our studio. And I'm going to use some primitive shapes like for the floor and for the walls, so we can just project map everything to those shapes.
Oh, hey guys, I was just swimming in the ocean. This is, by the way, a stock clip from our sponsor Storyblocks today. You can find tens of thousands of VR stock clips, as well as other collections like technology, sport, architecture, nature, and so much more. Every day, new stock clips are being added, and you can just download unlimited video assets with an active subscription. Now, apart from the high-quality 4K stock clips, you can also find After Effects templates. There are transitions, overlay effects, animations, and so much more. We use it almost on a daily basis, as you can see, not only for our creative work, but also just to swim around in an ocean with the turtles in VR. So start downloading right now by clicking the first link in the description down below. With only a single price per year, you have access to over 1 million video assets, which you can download unlimited. Alright, I'm going back in.
After some testing and messing around, we found out that it's possible to recreate our studio with projection mapping, which is actually quite simple. Then next we tested the 3D camera tracking of our moving shot. Also, that worked fine. However, if we then combine the two techniques, we got some wrong perspective changes on our projected studio walls. So with our tight deadlines, we decided to simplify the effect and shoot everything from a tripod. But we are still going to float. However, not with wires, we are going to use some chairs and a lot of masking. But of course, we have to test this. So we decided to move the tracking points away from the legs to the belt because the legs move separately, and that's not what we want because that will mess up the tracking. So that's why we're going to the belt. So as you saw, I was also testing the lightsaber tracking. First I did this in Cinema 4D and quickly noticed it wasn't going to work because I didn't have enough tracking data, so I tried it in After Effects. And now it's time to build the set.
Hey Janik, catch! You can see the fear in his eyes. It's really hard to get the rhythm right. At least for me, I have no sense for rhythm. Whoa! Yeah! Whoa! Yeah! Come at me, bro! So I might seem very strong, but I'm afraid that I won't. So I cut a little bit into the stick, so that way it will break easier as I knock it on my knee. Knee. So we just practiced a ton because we only have one chance because there's only one broomstick. If it breaks, we cannot do it again. Unless we have to go back to the shop. But I don't want to do that. I don't think the boys want to do that either.
We have all the shots that we needed. Now you probably saw that we did a light change. Because we want to collapse the walls of our scene to reveal the Beat Saber world, we also need to adjust the light on our great actor, Jordy. This wasn't anything too fancy, just two RGB lights that we manually faded in on a certain point. We also decided to do this light change just before we want to float. This way we avoided light mismatches when creating the floating effect. Of course, we also still need to create our final 3D scene with the collapsing walls and the Beat Saber world. So, enough talking.
Currently it's day 4 and we're still rendering. My computer is going, Janik's computer is going. Downstairs I also connected the computer to render. Janik stole Jordy's computer to make the floating effect. And currently I'm working on a laptop connected to my screens to make the lightsabers, which I easily do with the Saber plugin, my tracking data from the sticks, slap them together and I have lightsabers.
And this is where I have to sit, guys. On a laptop near the window with a very small bench. This is where I have to work.
We are finally rendering. And what time is it?
8:30!
8:30. Yay!
So guys, it's Friday. Is it finished yet? We should be posting right now. Like, this is the time where we start exporting the video and uploading. And you're still working in Cinema 4D. This is the face that I'm making.
Guys, we have some bad news. It's gonna get technical now. Luckily we finished in time, and that was all because of our great planning. The first thing that we did was create all the 3D stuff, because we knew that rendering it all would take ages. And we were correct. So I started by creating our studio with some basic shapes, and then with a camera projection I added textures to those shapes. Super easy. But if you want to learn more about project mapping, definitely check out Production Crate's video about it. I'll leave a link for that in the description below. My next step was breaking the walls. I used a Voronoi fracture object on my walls, which allowed me to break said wall in multiple pieces. Now we just need to add some dynamics to it. So I made the wall a rigid body, allowing it to interact with other objects and forces like gravity. Next we used a Beat Saber cube as a collider body, hitting the wall and breaking it. We used a second cube to break the wall further and eventually made the whole wall disappear.
With the wall gun you of course need a new background, which in this case was the Beat Saber world. This I simply created with some really basic shapes, added a few lights and on top of it some fog. For the flying cubes I made two different models, one of a cube in its hole and one that was already cut in half. Since Jordy his swings were so fast you wouldn't notice that he isn't actually cutting the cube, but we were just jump cutting between the models. I also made an HDRI with our Insta360 to make sure the cubes would have the same light as the world Jordy was standing in and also so it would perfectly reflect the scene. And after all that is done, it's time to hit render.
Okay, our render is running. Now let's start with working on the floating effect. I'm not really going to go in detail as we have an in-depth tutorial about it where Jordy gets kidnapped by aliens. Again, a link in the description. We shot everything from a tripod. One where Jordy stands on the ground and one where he's pushing himself up with two chairs. Then in After Effects we rotoscoped them out, tracked his floating legs and combined the two shots. Then parent the body shot to the legs and eventually parent everything to a null object. Give that null a wiggle and boom, you have a floating person.
Our last step is adding some final details, like a light trap, maybe some color grading and most importantly the lightsabers. Of course, we made these with the Saber plugin from Video Copilot. In our shot, Jordy's holding real sticks, which we have done to make it ourselves way easier. We could easily track the position of both ends of the stick, use that tracking data to parent it to the Saber effect, and look at that, we have some really cool Saber swords. Then we just threw everything together and we got this.
So what I learned this week is that rendering takes a ton of time, but I think it looks good, right? Let us know in the comments, guys. What do you think of the end result? I think it's amazing. Props to Lorenzo and Janik. That was it. Alright, thanks for watching. Thank you Storyblocks for the support, and as always, stay creative.
That's good.
Now that looks pretty hard, man. So what we learned this week, rendering, let's say.
Hard, wat is dat toch?
So what I learned. So what I learned. Yeah, opnieuw.